Hello, everybody. Welcome in to another episode of the Couch GMs podcast. It is draft week, Wednesday, April 27th, 2022, and I'm your host, George Kerth, here joined by draft expert Cody Roadcap. Cody, it's your favorite time of the year, isn't it?
It is. I think you're too kind with the draft expert. Just a guy that enjoys doing mock drafts, watching some highlights, reading breakdowns, going over draft guys. So this is definitely one of my favorite times of the year during the off season. I know some people get excited about free agency. Doesn't really excite me. I get super excited for the draft, but I'm glad it's here. I'm glad we're finally to this point. It takes forever to get to the draft. A lot of great prospects, and we're going to enjoy breaking them down today.
We're going to have to enjoy these next 2 weeks as much as we can before we get into the second lull of the NFL offseason. But yes, today we're going to talk some NFL news and notes. A lot of interesting rumors to talk about this week, mostly in the news as we get ready for the draft. And we are going to give our final draft preview and a mock draft by one Cody Roadcap. We're also going to be talking about a little bit of a predict the pick challenge here in this episode as well. Why don't you guys find us on thecouchgms.com for more information on that and on our social media channels so you don't miss out on anything that we post. Cody, let's jump right into NFL news. Starting off NFL news with a schedule announcement. The NFL schedule for this year will be announced on May 12th. The international schedule, which we already know the matchups, we'll find the dates for, will come out on May 4th. We're almost there. I almost missed the times when they announced the schedule a little bit closer to the draft, but it gives us something a little to look forward to in a few weeks.
Yeah, it's definitely trying to fill that lull, and I think if I remember correctly from the press releasings, they're going to do like a big promo for the first Thursday night game. They're going to announce that during night one of the draft. So we're going to start getting some games as we get closer to training camp, but to help fill out that lull, the NFL is really stretching it out. And I was going to take a quick side note for this is really just me talking directly to the NFL. If you could please schedule the Packers versus whoever game on October 30th. It's a Sunday. That way I can convince my fiance to go to London for our honeymoon. October 30th, please, Packers. That's it. But I'm really excited for the NFL schedule to come out. A lot of great matchups. Always fun to at least dream about which all games you're going to go to and see how many of them you actually get to.
Exactly. I think that would actually be hilarious if you can finagle your honeymoon in London, which I think would be a great place to go for a honeymoon too, but just get a little extra in there. But yes, I mean, as much as I am a little upset that it takes longer to get to the schedule, it is nice that in a few weeks in the lull, we're going to have something to talk about and we can start making our predictions. And I think this is also to give the schedule makers a little bit of an idea of how the draft falls. Maybe they want two first round quarterbacks going against each other early in the year or something like that. So I think that's another reason why they switched it up. But we have that to look forward to shortly. On to some other news. The big one for the week is Deebo Samuel is asking for a trade from the San Francisco 49ers. As soon as we thought that, oh, maybe this is starting to calm down, he was seen in a club earlier this week, and there was a big sign that says Deebo staying with the 49ers, and he gave a head shake and a no, that's not happening. So it seems like he really does want out of San Francisco, but San Francisco does not seem to agree and does not want to move him. So what do you think, Cody?
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting come draft night. And remember, the 49ers, they don't have a first round pick. It is now with the Kansas City Chiefs through the Miami Dolphins from their Trey Lance deal last year. So they could be looking to get back in the first round. And if it is a trade is going to happen with Deebo Samuel, it's going to happen this week in draft. They're not going to, no one's going to trade for a 2023 first round pick because it's not as enticing. You want to get that guy now to bring them in. And honestly, if you trade Deebo Samuel after the draft, he's most likely going to make that team better and make that pick less valuable. So that's why this week is going to be very important for Deebo Samuel. He seems to be the most likely guy to be on the move. But I will just throw out there some other wide receivers to keep your eye on, especially on how the draft falls. We're going to break it down a little bit, but if some teams like the Commanders, they draft a wide receiver, that might make a guy like Terry McLaurin a little bit more flexible. Another guy that seems to be out there. Keep an eye on the Tennessee Titans. I still don't think they're going to move A.J. Brown, but it is worth noting that the GM has gone from we're not trading him to that's something I don't foresee. Maybe that's just me spending way too much time overanalyzing all the Aaron Rodgers, how technical he is with his words, but just that minor change of not changing to something that's we don't foresee could say, hey, there's a little bit of wiggle room there. Maybe there is something going on. And then obviously DK Metcalf is another big name to watch out. But Deebo Samuel is the guy that's probably going to be the most coveted going into the draft because he is the guy that seems to be having his, fist on the table. Hey, I'm not coming back here. There's a lot of great teams. The New York Jets, they were big in for Tyreek Hill. Would not be surprised if they were big in for Deebo Samuel, especially with head coach Robert Saleh and offensive coordinator Mike McDaniel from the San Francisco. They got to work with him for the 3 previous years. Like, they know what he's about. So I think the Jets, that pick 10, that's when it's going to get really exciting. But George, is there any other teams that you think might be in the mix for Deebo?
I think some of the teams that have 2 first-round picks have to be teams that are watched. So, I mean, the Jets, I still believe, have 2 first-round picks. They're obviously one that's big in there for that talk. The Eagles are still looking for a wide receiver. I mean, we're going to talk more about them in a second, but they're a team that you have to watch out for putting in a good offer. I think the New Orleans Saints could use a wide receiver, but they want to use their picks more for quarterback purposes, or like keep that ammo for a quarterback if they need it. So I don't know if they're going to make that move, but they would be another team that I think would be a good fit. So those are the 3 that I'm watching because I know they have the ammo to make that move and still not compromise their draft this year, which is big.
Definitely. And it's also worth noting if we, spin this back to a fantasy, if you were listening all second half of last season, we were like, Deebo running back, Deebo wide receiver. And it seems, there has nothing has been confirmed, but if you connect the dots, it does seem like the reason Deebo Samuel wants out is because he doesn't want to carry the ball 10 times a game. He doesn't want to be put in the run.
Mm-hmm.
He wants to prolong his career. He's seeing these wide receivers getting $20-25 million a year. He was dominant as a number 1 wide receiver the first half of the season before he was turned into, he split duties in the backfield and at wide receiver. He wants to prove that he's the number 1 guy. He wants to get paid. And you can understand it because he is a very talented wide receiver and he doesn't want to shorten his career by continuing to play running back. He did it to help his team try to win a championship. He's saying, hey, again, I'm just speculating. He's saying, hey, this is enough. And it seems like they weren't willing to come to the table or to negotiate. So he's like, hey, I'm out. That's the connecting the dots we're getting from this situation. And it's going to be very interesting as it unravels the next few days on where Deebo Samuel goes. And it's probably going to Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, right as we're posting this podcast, after we've already talked about it for a few minutes, is going to announce the trade. So this all might be mute by the time you're listening.
And if not, maybe one of these other trade speculations will be. But no, before we move on to our next take here, there's also quarterbacks to watch as we come into the draft as well. You have to watch the Jimmy Garoppolo. You have to watch Sam
Baker.
Darnold's a possibility. Baker Mayfield is the other big one. Exactly. So there's a lot of pieces that could move around, but one that was kind of shocking to me, reported by Cody's friends over at Cheesehead TV, the Packers are interested in Darren Waller. Apparently, there was rumors of them trying to get him in the trade that sent Devontae Adams to the Raiders, but you cannot trade a player in a deal where somebody's on the franchise tag, something like that, some weird NFL rule going on there. So it was not a possibility. But the Packers may be back for a second dip at Darren Waller. Can they pull off that move, Cody? As the insider over here is having some friends that reported this. Maybe you know something.
Yeah, so this is very interesting. It's been confirmed actually that the original trade for Devontae Adams was a first and Darren Waller for Devontae Adams. And then the NFL shot it down because there was a new rule put into the 2020 CBA update that any player on the franchise tag who is unsigned, and since Devontae said he would not play on the franchise tag, he actually did not sign that tender. So because of that, you can only involve draft picks, and that's how you get the first and the second for Darren Waller. So on the surface, that looks like they value Darren Waller as a second round pick. Now that you're closer to the draft, you're starting to see what prospects might be there. Things might have changed. Maybe they're trying to get him for a third round pick. Maybe the NFL won't let them just, give the Raiders 53 pick back for Darren Waller as like, hey, we know what you're doing. We already told
And
you
not
no
Sly.
once. So maybe it'll have to be a third and a fourth or something like that. I know we're not doing quotes of the week, But after that report came out on Monday evening, Derek Carr himself quote tweeted it on Twitter and said, "LOL, no chance." I think Jeremy Fowler from ESPN on Tuesday reported there's zero chance of this happening. But I don't know how you can say zero chance when there was already a deal agreed to before the league
Mhm.
shot it down, and we don't know what happened in the draft. Um, to me, like Darren Waller, if from a fantasy perspective, like sign me up, tight end one, if he
Oh
goes to
yeah.
Green Bay.
Oh yeah.
But from like a Packers team building standpoint, I don't know how much, how much Darren Waller is definitely better than Robert Tonyan. I'm not saying that, but how much different of a player is Darren Waller than Robert Tonyan, who you just re-signed? And like now they're not going to both be able to play on the field together. Like that's where I'm coming from it. Like obviously I think Darren Waller is, the better player, but he is almost 30. He has 2 years left on his deal, but there's no guarantee, so he's going to want a new deal. So it seems like an odd situation for a player to be, to be chasing or going after. But they were in for Zach Ertz, and he was in a very similar situation too. So I would not be surprised if come Friday evening on the draft, if we see Darren Waller get moved.
Man, there's a lot of teams that play two tight end sets as almost their base package. I know that's not the Packers. That hasn't been them for a long time, but they also haven't had the tight ends in their system to run that. So, like, if they do trade for Darren Waller, I get how it's like, oh, him and Robert Tonyan are very similar players. They could both be on the field at the same time, especially considering that they are not deep at the wide receiver position right now. Their roster chemistry has changed. If it's something that Rodgers is comfortable with, I would not be shocked if this trade did happen and it still could be beneficial to the Packers. It's just going to change their offense off of what we've traditionally seen as a Packers offense.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. It would, do some limited in the run game because they're both not very good blockers. Normally, those two tight
Mm-hmm.
ends, at least one of them is a solid run blocker, which you would be losing that as well. But, it'll definitely be worth noting. It was pretty exciting for about 12 hours until it seems to be shot down, but it's something we wanted to keep you guys uh, on, and just know that it was actually confirmed that the deal was a first and Darren Waller for Devontae Adams. Then the league shot it down, and that's how it got to a first and a second. So the Raiders were willing to trade him once. Maybe a month later, they're like, hey, actually, look how tough this division is. We want all the pieces. We'll figure it out with Waller. But if he wants a new deal because there's no guarantees left, they just paid Chandler Jones. They just played Derek Carr. They just played Devontae Adams. They can't pay anyone. I know the salary cap is exploding, but he could be that unfortunate cap casualty that they have to move on from. But, Darren Waller is not the biggest tight end news
Oh no!
of the week.
Oh no!
As the resident Eagles fan, George, I know you're pretty excited about JJ Arcega-Whiteside officially moving to tight end.
Honestly, I am actually excited about that because there is one thing that JJ Arcega-Whiteside could do, and that's block. So like him moving to tight end is going to be absolutely irrelevant for fantasy. It's going to be absolutely irrelevant in the passing game. But man, he might actually be a good run blocking piece, especially because the Eagles lost Zach Ertz, who was as good of a run blocker as he was a pass catcher. Maybe this is actually a really good move, and this is the only way he stays on the roster this year.
Yeah, I actually like the move a lot. You make a good point about the run blocking. Um, I think I was going to talk about later in the year too when we were coming up on some of those deep dives for dynasty leagues. And I'd mentioned him last year too. Tyree Jackson, the quarterback convert to tight end on the Eagles, he's now suffered his second torn ACL injury, so he's struggling to stay healthy. Getting JJ Arcega-Whiteside behind Dallas Goedert, who has pass catching ability, who is a good run blocker. Obviously, you're not going to draft him in fantasy coming up if it's a redraft league. If you're in a deep dynasty league, you might want to take a flyer on it if you can hold him for a year or two, just because if something happens to Dallas Goedert, he would essentially move into tight end one at this point, unless they go out and draft someone or bring in another body. But they're pretty thin after Goddard. Now Goddard is the all-star; he's a focal point of that offense, but you can't rule out the possibility of an injury. And a guy like Arcega-Whiteside, who's been in the offense before, granted it's a new position, could be something entertaining and could be a waiver wire pickup we're talking about midseason. I know George is definitely not hoping for that, but something you might be hoping for is the Eagles are open to trading Jalen Reagor.
Yeah, one more thing on Arcega-Whiteside before we move on. So a couple of weeks ago, I was on with Tyler and we are talking about Anthony Ferkser signing with the Atlanta Falcons, and I was saying how if you have a really good roster in a dynasty and you have one spot, you're just like, I want to throw at a guy. Maybe you do that, like along with what Cody's saying. Maybe Arcega-Whiteside's another guy you could just throw him on there, expect nothing. If there's an injury or something happens, maybe he works out for you. But yeah, you're basically in that situation. The Eagles open to trading Jalen Reagor. That's a big move, and I actually want to tie this back to the Deebo Samuel trade request for a second, because the Eagles reportedly, this one was not confirmed, unlike that Darren Waller trade we talked about with the Packers. We're talking about offering a first round pick, a second round pick, and Jalen Reagor for Deebo Samuel. So this did seem serious. There's rumors out there of him being involved in trade talks. He's another wide receiver that could get moved on draft night, and who knows what we could actually get out of him. He's a former first round pick. You're probably not going to get that, but he could be packaged with some of these picks that the Eagles have to move up or get picks for the future.
Hey, I wouldn't be surprised. He might just need a change of scenery because he's never gonna, Eagles fans, they're diehard, but they can be a little extra, a little toxic at points, and he'll
Ain't
never
that
be able
true?
to let live down, even though it was not his fault, that he's not Justin Jefferson. Granted, that was
Yeah.
the front office, but he's never able to live that down in Philadelphia. Go to a team like San Francisco, let Kyle Shanahan do his work magic with him. He could turn into something. I wouldn't give up on Jalen Reagor if he does get moved. It could be a solid addition. Could be a flyer you take late in fantasy drafts. So definitely worth noting. I do like that scenario for, besides the fact that Deebo Samuel is not coming to Green Bay, but we all know the San Francisco 49ers aren't trading him to the Packers.
Mm-mm.
So if any of us can have him, you can have him, George. And then real quick, it wasn't on the rundown, but first round draft pick Kadarius Toney is rumored to be available via trade. Now I know that's been shot down a little bit, but just something another wide receiver we're gonna watch as we go throughout the draft. New GM, new head coach might not fit their system and want to move on. It is a red flag that a rookie taking a top 20 pick a year later is now available. But again, it's a new system, new head coach. So a lot of moving pieces. This is what makes the draft so exciting. I mean, what else are we going to do but talk about this kind of stuff when the teams take all 10 minutes to make their pick, especially the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are on the clock. They've been on clock since the end of the season. But since they're on the clock, George, why don't we go ahead and move into what everyone's been waiting for with our draft preview mock draft edition.
Yes, Cody, we're talking mock draft, so we're going to give you a breakdown of a mock draft made by one Cody Roadcap, and we're going to give some thoughts on maybe some prospects we already talked about, some prospects that we have not talked about, because we know there's a lot of defense we haven't talked about, and maybe we'll talk about how some trades might happen in this, even though there were no trades in your mock draft. We'll just see how everything falls. So we're going to take this in chunks. We're going to go 5 picks at a time, and then we're going to get back and talk about some of the prospects that were in that group. So I can just start us right off here, Cody, with picks 1 through 5. Jacksonville Jaguars, who have been on the clock, you have them taking Trayvon Walker, edge out of Georgia. The Detroit Lions at 2, taking Aiden Hutchinson, edge out of Michigan. The Houston Texans are taking Sauce Gardner, the corner out of Cincinnati. That would actually be the highest draft pick of a Cincinnati player in history, I want to say. The New York Jets at number 4, taking Derek Stingley Jr., the corner out of LSU. And then the New York Giants at 5, taking Kayvon Thibodeau, edge out of Oregon. So I just want to start it off with no quarterbacks in the top 5. That'd be the first time since 2013 that happens. All of them are defensive players, 3 edge rushers. So what are your thoughts going so defense heavy in the top 5?
One, I think it speaks to the quarterback class. I am 99.9% sure that no quarterback is going in the top 5 of this draft. I know there was some rumors early in the process that the Detroit Lions could be in on Malik Willis, especially in this scenario, especially now that the Jacksonville Jaguars have seemed to target in on Trayvon Walker over Aiden Hutchinson, which doesn't make sense to me. I know Aiden Hutchinson measured a little bit of short arms, but he's still an exceptional athlete, a little bit of, Heisman, finalist. like elite defensive player. My opinion, the best player in the class. And the Jags owner apparently wants him, but the GM says Trayvon Walker. We'll see how that one, spins out. And I went with Trayvon Walker. I should, real quick, before we go on to some more picks, give you a little background on the mock draft. I did this as not, some of it is what I would do. Like that was the tiebreaker. But a lot of this is stuff I've been reading, stuff I've been researching, other people I've listened to, getting a feel of where these players might go. And that's how I came up with this draft. So it's kind of like what I'm hearing around the NFL, even though what I'm hearing is what you guys are probably all hearing, listening to. So you might have heard some of the same things, but Jags going Walker, the Detroit Lions, if Hutchinson, the hometown guy out of Michigan, is there, the best prospect, like they're going to take all 10 minutes, but they're going to have that card filled out at 9:58. Like they're going to wait for someone to like give them like 4 first-round picks to come up, but like it's already going to say Aiden Hutchinson. On the
Mhm.
back-to-back corners, I think is where we get a little bit interesting. I wouldn't be surprised if Stingley actually goes ahead of Ahmad Sauce Gardner. I mean, Sauce is an incredible name, but I know the
Oh yeah.
Texans reportedly are very high on Stingley as well. So those guys could easily be flipped. And then the Jets, if they don't go corner, I wouldn't be surprised if they take an edge rusher in Kayvon Thibodeau. But I'll tease you a little bit later. They get a guy at pick 10 that can come off the edge. So that's where I'm at.
Hmm.
George, any issues, any things that are sticking out to you from these original 5 or top 5?
No, I think it's going to be defense heavy. I like the 2 corners, 3 edges in the top 5. The only pick I think that could be different is if one of these teams surprisingly is like super high on a quarterback and wants to jump to 2, they might take a quarterback at 2, switching with the Lions. The Lions have seemed very interested in listening about trading out. But I think it's a good move for them to wait until their second first round pick at 32 to take a quarterback themselves. So I like the Hutchinson, or maybe they even go Walker if Hutchinson does go 1. Um, no, I have no problems with this. It's pretty good analysis there, Cody.
I appreciate it. And it's also worth noting that I believe it was Tom Paracello put out earlier this week that there's actually a lot of teams in the top 10 that are trying to trade back just because there's not a lot of top tier talent, but this draft is very deep in prospects that could be solid players. So they're trying to get back, acquire more picks, but they're having trouble to find players. So I know when you do your mock draft machines, you're like, oh, it's so easy to trade. It does take 2 teams to tango. So some of these teams might not be able to find their trade partner. If a quarterback does go in the top 5, it's because they're jumping the Carolina Panthers.
Pretty
And I'll
much,
just
yeah.
transition that right into the Carolina Panthers. Some may say this is a surprise, but I have them taking Kenny Pickett, the quarterback out of Pittsburgh, which I'll talk about in a second. The Giants take the first offensive lineman in Ike Ekwonu out of NC State. The Falcons continue the offensive run with wide receiver Garrett Wilson out of Ohio State. Seattle offensive lineman Evan Neal, who some say could go number 1 still, so getting him at number 9 is incredible value. And then, like I teased at the beginning, Jeremiah Johnson III is an edge rusher out of Florida State. He's been another high riser in this draft process. The Jets don't take Thibodeau at 4, end up still getting a solid pass rusher. I know wide receiver is an option there, but I think with this draft, the depth, having early second round picks, they wait on a wide receiver. So that's why I went Jeremiah Johnson. George, what sticks out to you the most about these top 5 or the next 5?
Um, I'll just ramble on a couple of them and you can kind of fill in. First thing, Evan Neal not only being all the way down at pick 9, but not even being the first offensive lineman off the board. It's very possible, but it's something that a lot of people are probably going to disagree with you with. Um, I do like the fact that the Jets wait and take Jermaine Johnson at 10 and still get their corner up at pick 4. I think that would be their smartest draft move. I don't know if that's how they're going to go. I would not be shocked if they take Thibodeau at 4, for example, and then have to try to find that secondary piece at pick 10. But Kenny Pickett, that's the one that everyone's going to talk about there. Part of me, I've said this today to my coworkers. I want to see a quarterback taken before pick 6 because I'm very interested if the Panthers decide to change their tone on Baker Mayfield or on Jimmy Garoppolo if they see a quarterback come off the board and start to freak out. Kenny Pickett makes sense to them, in my opinion, because he is the most NFL-ready quarterback. I know he's not even the highest-rated quarterback in the class. People have been talking about Malik Willis for a long time. But I think Pickett makes sense for them because he can step in and he's the best chance of starting day one, even though I think it's still going to be a work in progress. If he goes, I am not convinced like that they won't make a trade for one of those two quarterbacks. They've been denying it for a long time. But I don't see how that's not their best move. And do you agree with me there?
Well, I think so. I see what you're saying. If someone trades with the Giants to take the guy that they want, like I have my guess is whether it's Pickett, Willis, whether they're going to shock the world and take Matt Corral or Sam Howell or Desmond Ritter at 6, one of those 5, because they're all very similar. Like they're
Mm-hmm.
different play styles, but they're all similarly ranked. So I feel like they have their guy of that 5. If for some reason they're not there, I think Baker Mayfield becomes an option. What you have to remember about the Carolina Panthers is this is Matt Rule's 3rd season, and
Yeah.
he knows that. This is why I went Kenny Pickett. Is one, Kenny Pickett has started 49 college games. He's more ready to come in and play right now. Matt Rule actually recruited him, trying to get him to Temple back when he was coming out of high school. So there is a connection there. Like he's been following him essentially his whole career now. And this is like the guy that I think, while there might be more upside with Malik Willis, I think this is the guy that could come in and help them win now. And if he's not there, maybe they do go out and get a Baker Mayfield. We'll have to wait and see. That's the kind of guy, like the move. They'll have to wait, and you have to wait and see post draft. If they don't take a quarterback, maybe they don't even take a quarterback here at 6, and they try to get back in the end of the second round. It's like Desmond Ritter or Matt Corral is one of their guys. They try to, get back into that first round to get the extra 5th-year option. But for me, I went Kenny Pickett because of his connection with Matt Rule, and he's, of the guys that are available, he's probably the most ready to come in and compete right now. And I think that's what this team needs. And then the other thing you mentioned was Ike Ekwonu over Evan Neal. I think they're very similar. I know Evan Neal is probably considered the best all-around offensive lineman. Ekwonu is definitely the best pass blocker. Probably doesn't live up to the same run blocking as Evan Neal does. But with Brian Daboll coming over from Buffalo, that pass-happy offense, I know it's Daniel Jones. I know what I'm saying. Is why you're like, dude, they have Saquon Barkley. Like, let's let them run the ball. But Ekwonu, I think, could be a solid piece to that offensive line that I feel like the Giants have been, working on for the last decade.
And they'll still keep working on probably, but if they can finally get that one key piece in the draft, that would be a huge step towards protecting Daniel Jones, giving him that one more shot, and hopefully if they can keep Saquon Barkley on the field, opening him back up, because I know he is on his revenge tour this year, it seems, from his media talk. But I can move us on then to picks 11 through 15. So at 11, the Washington Commanders, you have taking Drake London, wide receiver out of USC. The Vikings at 12, taking Trent McDuffie, corner out of Washington. The Houston Texans, Kyle Hamilton, safety out of Notre Dame. The Baltimore Ravens at 14, Jordan Davis, defensive lineman out of Georgia. And the Eagles at 15, Chris Olave, wide receiver out of Ohio State. So I'm actually not going to start with the wide receiver. I'm going to tee up Kyle Hamilton here, because I know he's the number 1 rated player on NFL's drafting combine numbers. And maybe it's because he plays safety and it's not quite as valued of a position as an edge rusher, a quarterback, a wide receiver. That's why he falls all the way to 13. But I feel like that's a steal for the Houston Texans to get a ball hawking safety at pick 13.
Yeah, so Kyle Hamilton, definitely one of the toughest guys to predict in this mock draft. Easily could have had him go, 5 to the Giants, 7 to the Giants. Thought about him with the New York Jets. Thought about him with the Seattle Seahawks. But that he had, I don't want to say a slow 40 time because it wasn't slow, but it wasn't what anybody was expecting. So it's knocked him down. I've seen, people don't expect him to go in the top 10.
It was still a 4.38. So if we're talking about that slow,
I thought it was in the 4.7s, 4.6s.
I mean, on NFL.com, it has him as a 4.38. Maybe he ran that at his pro day or something like that.
That's right. So that's the correct. He ran that's how he ran like a 4.38 the combine, and then at his pro day he ran like a 4.7. So they're like, oh, because this was like the fastest combine ever. They were crediting some of that to like new turf. They're like, oh, why is there such a big difference? So he's been dropping. I don't understand it. I think he, like you mentioned, I still have Hutchinson as the number one player. Kyle Hamilton will be number two. Like, honestly, if the Detroit Lions took Kyle Hamilton, like, it's not a reach by any means.
Mm-mm.
So I agree, it's incredible value. I don't think you can rule out the Texans taking him at number 3, and for them to come around and get them at 13. This is a spot that I liked it. I will say the Houston Texans are one of the hardest teams. This actually group as a whole was like the hardest portion of the mock draft for me, because I feel like all these teams can go in different directions. I think any of them could, take Kyle Hamilton. I think the Houston Texans are going to be looking to trade back. This would be a prime candidate for a team because they are limited in picks. If a team is going to come up and try to jump the Saints, who are up in a couple picks for a quarterback, try to get ahead of the Steelers. Maybe the Steelers are the team trying to come up. Houston Texans might be the first area of a real possibility for a trade come draft night. If we're not seeing much action, because it could be a low trade in the top 10. And then the other one, you mentioned the wide receivers. 2 did go in this section. You got Chris Olave. I've heard that the Eagles are obsessed with him. Tie that back in with them now shopping Jalen Reagor. It seems that they're going to go wide receiver for 3 straight years. And then the Washington Commanders, I could have easily went with Jameson Williams over Drake
Mm-hmm.
London. I ended up going with Drake London because if you look at their wide receiver core, they have Diami Brown, they have Cam Sims, they still have Terry McLaurin, whether he'll still be there if they would make this pick or not. They have a lot of speed guys, deep threats, top end guys. We don't know what his actual speed is with Drake London. I know that's one of the knocks on him, but he is a guy that can move. He's one of the best, if not the best, 50-50 jump ball, attack the ball at the point of attack. A guy, very similar to like an Alshon Jeffrey, and then we saw, that was Carson Wentz's best years. So whether you're
Yep.
planning for the future with Carson Wentz or not, you also want to build your wide receiver room with a variety of different play sets. And that's why, though I think Jameson Williams is a better prospect than Drake London, I still went Drake London to the Commanders because it was a better fit for their team.
Yeah, I mean, that was actually something I was going to bring up when it got to the wide receivers. So you answered that one for me. The other one is I've seen some rumors or some mock drafts that have come out that the Minnesota Vikings are taking a wide receiver at 12. That doesn't make much sense to me, but would a move like that make like Adam Thielen an expendable wide receiver? Or how would you see that falling if they do decide to go say that one of these wide receivers is the top best available and they go for it?
I don't think you can rule out a wide receiver I don't think you rule out for the Vikings or really any team. Like, as pass happy as this
Mhm.
league is going, look at the 2 Super Bowl teams from 2021. They all were 3 wide receivers deep, like 3
Fair.
solid wide receivers deep. I think that's where we're going. That's why we're seeing wide receivers getting paid $25 million. Remember, the first round, you get that extra 5th-year option. I think that makes, now that the wide receivers are like the second highest paid position, getting them for an extra year before you have to actually pay them. I know the 5th year is fully guaranteed and a high number, but it's not $25 million a year, which could be 30 by the time that their contracts are up. So, like, definitely something worth noting. I don't think it would make Adam Thielen available. I'm trying to recall, but I believe they renegotiated his contract this offseason to help with the cap space. So I think making him a little bit too hard to trade with what they did. But he is getting up there in age. It could be a guy that they look to move next year, get that long time running mate with Justin Jefferson. And honestly, as much as we're seeing these wide receivers have frustrations and wanting to move, and there's already been some, reports that Justin Jefferson isn't as happy as he may seem in Minnesota. He might not want to be there long term, and we're seeing that with Deebo. There's other guys are mentioned. I wouldn't put it past them, but this team has desperately been trying to find a cornerback for a while now. They've had some, misses, guys that they thought would be better. Some had gotten to some off the field issues, and they've had to move on. Trent McDuffie, I think he's a solid option. He's not, Stingley Jr. or Sauce Gardner, but he is still a very good prospect. And I think if he doesn't go there, I think if Trent McDuffie and Chris Olave are on the clock for the Eagles, I think that's going to be a very difficult decision for them. But since McDuffie was already gone, which is why Chris Olave kind of like just fell in the Eagles' lap.
if they are really as obsessed with Chris Olave as people think they are, I think that would have to be their pick. But a lot of it will probably have to do who's going to fall down to their next pick at pick 18. Who has the better chance? Great question. I feel like it might be McDuffie. If he does get to 15, he might have the better chance of going to 18, but that's a really tough call. I'm really not sure. But I can take us through pick 16 to 20 in your mock draft here. So we talked Jamison Williams. You have him going pick 16 to the New Orleans Saints. He's the wide receiver out of Alabama. Chargers taking Charles Cross, offensive lineman at Mississippi State at 17. The Eagles' 18th pick is George Karlaftis, edge out of Purdue. 19th, the Saints again take Trevor Penning, offensive lineman at UNI.
Yeah,
Okay.
University of Northern Illinois.
I've always had it written out as Northern Illinois, and that's why it threw me off there.
Sorry, yeah.
Okay.
UNI.
UNI. And then pick 20, Malik Willis, quarterback out of Liberty. I know that there's been a lot of talk of the Steelers and Malik Willis and a lot of mutual interest there. I don't know if he gets to 20. I don't know if they have to move up to get him. I don't know if he even, gets taken in that first quarterback pick somewhere around pick 6 or maybe even a little earlier if a team moves up. But it seems like the Steelers and Willis want to have a reunion here. So, Cody, do you have this here because you think the Steelers are going to take him at 20? Or do you think it's the Steelers in general and that pick could move?
Well, it's definitely the hottest buzz of draft week is the connection between Willis and the Steelers, whether that's real, trying to get some other teams to like maybe, a team like the Panthers or a team like the Eagles are trying to, get that so that there's some competition to jump the Saints, something like that. We'll have to wait and see. But this reminds me or a lot to last year when we had Mac Jones. And, Mac Jones could go 3 to the San Francisco 49ers. Like, Mac Jones isn't going 3, but, there was some hype in that going into the draft. And then it was like, if not, he's going to the Panthers or he's going to the Patriots. And there was like, well, there's no way he's going to fall to 15. And he did. And I think we can see that exact same thing with Malik Willis. I know he's, that quote unquote project quarterback that has all the intangibles, the cannon arm, needs to work on his accuracy, but he's super athletic. He can use his feet, which we've seen the trend in the NFL. But I keep going back to that he's 24 and listed as a project. He's older than Jordan Love, who will now be going into his 3rd season in the NFL, who was a project quarterback. And he hasn't made as much strides. Some of that could be COVID. Some of that could be because he hasn't had the playing time opportunity. But project quarterbacks don't always work out in year one. They're always a long shot. So I like it to the Steelers. If he can go behind Mitch Trubisky, you might laugh, but learn a little bit, learn how to play in the NFL, get some actual training. There's not a pressing need to start. Maybe he starts the second half of the season if the Steelers are struggling. But I do like that bit. Whether it's at 20, whether they move up. But honestly, I'm starting to feel pretty confident that unless he goes number 6, that he'll be available at least 16 to the Saints, if not 20 to the Steelers.
Yeah, and like you did say, it is worth noting that the Eagles at 15 might be a trade candidate because of moving up ahead of the Saints. But that is going to be the pick that I'm going to really be watching if we start getting to like 11, 12, and Willis is still on the board. Is he going to fall? Is he going to go to the Saints? Is a team going to move up to get him? But Jamison Williams is another. Sorry, go ahead. No,
I was literally going to say, you're talking about picks 11, a pick 12. Jamison Williams at 16. He is I think, has the highest ceiling of all the. He has the highest ceiling that I think is attainable of all the wide receivers. There's some wide receivers that could be end of the first round, second round that I think they have all the talent, but they'll need to go to the right place to pull that in, like a Christian Watson or a George Pickens, who spoiler alert, aren't drafted in the first round of this draft. I think they have high ceilings as well, but Jameson Williams seems to be like the solid option. He could easily go as high as the Jets at 10, the Falcons at 8 if they like him over Garrett Wilson. So the Saints getting him at 16. I know there's the injury. He posted another video this week of him working out, getting people excited that he might be able to be back for training camp and not start on PUP. I hold your horses. It'll be like 6 months since he tore it. So let's 6 to 8 months in that range. So give him a break. If he misses the first 6 weeks, he still misses the first 6 weeks. But I think the Saints have had their eyes on Jameson Williams since before they made this trade with the Eagles, which is kind of surprising that they let the Eagles stay in front of them, a team that could take a wide receiver, and maybe they'll still take Jameson out of them. But if the Saints could walk away with this draft with Williams and Trevor Panning, I know it's not a quarterback, but I think that is like two positions that they desperately wanted to hit. Penning after losing Teron Armstead, Williams, maybe we'll see Michael Thomas get them a second wide receiver option. You have Winston for a year. If it doesn't work out, super deep class next year. And I think that's why a lot of these quarterbacks are going to fall too. Like, are you going to, do you want to do a Josh Rosen, Kyler Murray thing, or do you just want to play with the middle tier veteran you got, see if it works out, and if it doesn't, you're in the clear for next year, and you could take a quarterback in a better class.
Yeah, that's something we're going to have to watch out for. But I heard a real hot take on Jameson Williams today from an Ohio State fan. Because if you guys don't know, Jameson Williams played 2 years at Ohio State before transferring to Alabama. That he only transferred out to Alabama because Ohio State was completely comfortable with making him their fourth wide receiver on their depth chart this year. Obviously, you have 2 Ohio State wide receivers being drafted before him, but you're talking about he is the highest upside. The only reason he's as far down is because of his injury, but he does have all the attributes to be an NFL wide receiver. But is there any kind of doubt in your mind when you hear something like that, if that is true? Like, what did Ohio State see in him that made him not as good of a prospect than a Garrett Wilson and a Chris Olave?
Coaching. Like, it doesn't put any
Potentially.
concern into to me too. Like, players move all around. Like, I'd throw it back on you. How come Joe Burrow left Ohio State?
Fair.
Why couldn't they make Joe Burrow work?
Or there's always the quarterback carousel that Alabama had that made Jalen Hurts go to Oklahoma. So yeah, there's that.
Right. Like, that's, players switch. Sometimes they're better in other situations. Sometimes they're not. Jameson Williams, it could just be, also too, like, Olave's a senior. Like, he was there for 2 years. He is going to play. Like, he earned that right. He is a solid guy. And he went to an opportunity that was better with the guys that left from Alabama. And let's not act like going from Ohio State to Alabama is a downgrade. It's at least a lateral movement, if not an upgrade.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, fair. I was just interested because that was a hot take I heard today. And I was like, I never really thought of it that way. I don't know how true that is, but I wanted to bring it up because it was an interesting take on the wide receiver rankings for this draft. But I can move us on then to picks 21 to 25. At 21, we have the New England Patriots taking Devin Lloyd, linebacker out of Utah State. 22, Cody's Green Bay Packers are taking Dax Hill, safety out of Michigan. 23rd is Kaiir Elam, cornerback out of Florida, to the Arizona Cardinals. 24, the Dallas Cowboys are getting Treylon Burks, wide receiver out of Arkansas. And 25, Buffalo Bills, Andrew Booth Jr., cornerback out of Clemson. Now, I've heard a lot of talk about the Cowboys and a potential wide receiver if one of those guys falls down to them. Treylon Burks is someone who's very highly ranked by a lot of people. He might even be up with that group of wide receivers we were talking about already that went into teens and in the top 10 even. So that would be an insane weapon for them to add to that offense, especially after they just traded Amari Cooper, who could basically just jump right in and they'd still be that wide receiver deep team that can hit you from 4 different directions.
yeah, I'll be honest with you. I didn't like giving Treylon Burks to the Cowboys at 24. I thought about taking him to Green Bay at 22, Arizona at 23, 2 teams that could need a wide receiver as well. But there's just so much smoke around Burks to the Cowboys, whether it is smoke or if there's fire to it. Burks just seems like Jerry Jones's guy. Now, they might not get as lucky as Burks to fall into their lap like they did with CeeDee Lamb a few seasons ago. They might have to trade up to go get him. But there
And
is,
will they do that? Like, I don't know if the Cowboys would do that.
if Burks, if there is fire to the smoke and Burks is as much as the Cowboys guy, like they want him real bad. Like, it's almost as bad as it's being talked about that the Eagles want Chris Olave. Like, that kind of, like, that's their guy. They're going to go get that guy. And especially in the draft where there isn't a lot of top tier talents. Some people have Burks as wide receiver 1. in this class. Some people have Burks as wide receiver 7, 8, or 9. So like it is very split. I think Burks is a very solid prospect, probably wide receiver 4 in my mind. I think that goes pretty long where he's going. I think he is wide receiver 4 off the board on this one, maybe wide receiver 5. George can recap that quick as he counts them. But for me, the Burks pick to the Cowboys made too much sense. It was one of those that you almost penciled in and then do the mock draft around it, trying to just make sure it happens. Hopefully it doesn't, because that I feel like that would be a great replacement for Amari Cooper. Giving Dak another weapon be fun for Dallas. Some other names in this group of 5: Devin Lloyd, the first linebacker. I think he's the best linebacker in the class coming out of Utah State. Fun stat about him: he had 6 picks as a middle linebacker, 2 of them for pick sixes. So he's just like a guy that's always around the ball, had over 100 tackles. So fun guy to watch out. Seems very New England. Dax Hill, safety out of Michigan. If the Packers aren't going to take a wide receiver at 22, hopefully it is for a guy like Dax Hill. Versatile corner safety, most likely will play safety. Love the fit there. Cardinals, they need a cornerback. Kaiir Elam out of Florida, the next best safety available. You could flip him with Andrew Booth as well, who is I have mocked the Buffalo Bills. And I will say for Buffalo, if any team is going to take a running back, it's
Right
going to be
there.
Buffalo, and it's going to be Breece Hall at 25. I still don't think they pull the trigger, because I think they can get one of the top 3 in round 2, because I don't think the running backs are going to fly off the board. But Breece Hall to the Buffalo Bills. If that happens at pick 25 for fantasy, since this is a fantasy podcast, like instant rookie draft overall number 1 pick.
No doubt. And I think we talked about it last week in redraft. We were looking at him like late 2nd round, early 3rd round, if he does go to the Buffalo Bills. But I almost feel like I haven't heard a lot of talk about the Bills and taking a running back in the 1st round, unless you're talking to the fantasy community, because we're all sitting here trying to speak it into existence. Like, I don't know if there's actually a lot of truth into
No,
that happening.
I
So,
completely agree. Is it us, or like, because people are comparing them to Najee Harris last year, and how like everyone knew Najee Harris was going to the Steelers, and is that like just
but
us
there
trying to make
was,
that happen with the Buffalo
yeah,
Bills, or are they trying to stay silent, not let? I don't know if they want to really talk about taking a running back. I don't think any of the teams above them would have to worry about that. And also, this group of area, the Bills and the next couple picks also could be like trade down candidates for teams trying to get back into the 1st round for that 5th-year option, whether it's a quarterback, wide receiver, defensive player. This is the area that you see teams drop out of the 1st, pick up a 2nd and an extra pick down in the draft. The Bills, if they like Breece Hall, they can drop, Seattle. They didn't take a quarterback in the top 10. They have 2 second-round picks. If they could, throw them to Buffalo for the 25th pick to come up and get a quarterback the second half of the draft, get their 5th-round option. If they are in love with a guy like Desmond Ridder or Matt Corral, Buffalo could drop back to the 40s, get their running back. I didn't do trades, so I didn't take a running back in the 1st round because I don't think there'll be one, but I wouldn't rule it out for Buffalo.
yeah, I think the Pittsburgh situation last year with Najee Harris and the Bills situation this year is so much different. I think that, especially with them losing James Conner, it was just too much of a scenario where it's like, oh, this is going to happen. There was actually talk outside of the fantasy community of the Steelers are interested in Najee Harris. I just haven't heard that. So I think a lot of it is the fantasy community putting it into, like, trying to speak it into existence. But if you have nothing else to add there, Cody, I'm going to move us into the final 7 picks here in the 1st round. So we're at pick 26, where the Tennessee Titans, you have taking Nakobe Dean, linebacker out of Georgia. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 27, going Kenyon Green, interior offensive lineman, out of Texas A&M. The Packers' 2nd pick at 28 is Travis Jones, defensive lineman out of UConn. The Chiefs have back-to-back picks here, 29 and 30. 29, they are taking Jalen Petrie, defensive back out of Baylor, and Sky Moore at 30, which is what I think everyone has penciled in as well in their drafts. Wide receiver out of Western Michigan. 31, the Cincinnati Bengals, going Tyler Linderbaum, center out of Iowa. And 32, the Detroit Lions do get the quarterback with Desmond Ridder, quarterback out of Cincinnati.
Yeah, so there's probably a lot of question marks coming out The Lions taking
This
a
is an interesting section.
Lions taking a quarterback. Packers not taking a wide receiver. The Titans taking a linebacker. Like, there's definitely a lot of things. So I'll start right there at pick 26. Nakobe
Mhm.
Dean, one of, he's right there with Devin Lloyd as top linebackers. The Titans don't have a true inside linebacker. I know they did trade for Zach Cunningham. He's getting up there in age. Nakobe Dean could come in, play next to him, and then be their linebacker of the future. But again, another team, I would not be surprised if they trade out the first round, especially since they don't have their second round pick as it goes to Atlanta for the Julio Jones deal from last year. So the Tennessee Titans don't have a second round pick. So they might be a team that trades back. Buccaneers, Kenyon Green, they have to replace their two guards that they lost this offseason, one to retirement, one to free agency. So Kenyon Green, probably the best guard in the draft, clear cut, makes a ton of sense. 28, big head scratcher. We lead the first round. The Packers do not draft a wide receiver. That's all you're going to hear about until you get to the draft on Friday night, because that's what Packers are still not helping out Aaron Rodgers. The headlines are writing itself. Travis Jones is an elite, athletic, interior presence. We saw what this team did. They doubled down on their defense. What we saw in the wild card game the divisional game against the 49ers, elite defensive performance. They get better. They become more of a defensive team as they slowly rebuild this offense. If you asked me this 2 days ago, I would have told you George Pickens here is the clear pick, but there's a lot of reports coming out now that he didn't interview very well. There's some red flags, some character issues. He did get into some fights in Georgia. He never had a true full season of playing, elite number one, whether that was injuries or whatnot. So wasn't the best interview, still, a number one talent. He was a guy I talked about as would not be surprised in 5 years he's not the best wide receiver in the draft. But because he didn't interview well, we've seen numerous times where players like that fall. The Packers could take a chance on Travis Jones here and try to trade back up or see if Pickens falls all the way to 53. That would be quite the fall for him, in my opinion. Maybe they say, screw the bad interviews, we're taking them anyways. But for this draft, for fun, and because I like George Pickens so much and I didn't want to jinx it, I went Travis Jones. I will throw that little caveat in there. That was the deciding factor between. I was like, I'm not jinxing this. So, but Jalen Petrie and Sky Moore to the Chiefs. Petrie fits right in to replace Tyrann Mathieu. Love that pick for them. He's, I have him listed as a defensive back. He can play safety. He can play corner. Like, he can do a little bit of everything. Very Tyrann Mathieu-esque. Love that replacement there. Sky Moore, I've been talking about it since they traded Tyreek Hill. Just a fun, elite, prospect, human joystick. Like, seems like a Chiefs wide receiver. I did consider, Jahan Dotson out of Penn State. He's another late riser. Could be end of the first round talent. Wouldn't be surprised if that flips there. But because I feel like I've been talking Sky Moore in the first round of the Chiefs since, heck, before Tyreek Hill, but especially after Tyreek Hill. Ton of sense for that one. Linderbaum, Bengals. I know they signed Ted Karras at center this year. Linderbaum's the best center in the class. Let's just go full rebuild into this offensive line, protect Joe Burrow, get a solid prospect, whether Karras then goes play guard or he's just the backup or Linderbaum plays guard. They can make it work. But let's shore up that front for Joe Burrow so he can be successful for years to come. And then my favorite pick of the draft, I know it's for the Detroit Lions. Would be shocked if we get out of the draft and Desmond Ridder ends up being a first-round pick. I know I've talked down about this class or not. He's my favorite prospect as a person I enjoyed watching. That's not projecting. He's just my favorite prospect. Sometimes the players that are ranked higher, you don't like as much. Like George mentioned earlier, he's not as big a fan as Jameson Williams, so a lot of people have over Chris Olave, but he'd rather have Chris Olave, and that's okay. Some teams are going to like players differently. As a fan, we like players differently, so it's definitely worth watching. But if the Lions could come out of this draft with Hutchinson and Ridder, I would like how they're setting themselves up. Unfortunately, they're the Detroit Lions, so they might not be able to do that, or if they do get those guys, it probably won't work out, but it at least is a good groundwork for the future.
Yeah, and even if the Lions aren't the ones to take Desmond Ridder here, if they don't think that he's their answer, I would not be shocked if a team moves up to 32 to take him. The Lions move down a couple of picks or whatever it might be, because they're trying to get that fifth-year option. I know we talked about this a little bit last week, actually, where is Desmond Ridder going to be taken in the first round because a team comes up and wants 5 years? And that's very possible. So I like him at 32, whether it's the Lions or another team. I don't see many scenarios where we don't see 3 quarterbacks in round one, and the third one it might not be Desmond Ritter. Maybe someone likes someone else better, but I think Ritter makes the most sense for me as well as the third quarterback in the first round. Um, I like how you talked about Sky Moore a little bit there and Jahan Dotson and how those two might flip. But I'm with you how Sky Moore has just been the guy for the Chiefs for so long that like in our minds that that's where I'm going there at that pick, or at least one of those two Chiefs picks there as well. Um, but I'll hit on Kobe Dean a little bit because I've seen mock drafts. Maybe it was a little bit earlier in the process where he's even going in the teens. He is like I always considered him as my top linebacker in this draft. Devin Lloyd, obviously a great talent, could end up being just as good or better than Kobe Dean. I could be wrong, but at 26, I think that's a steal of a pick for the Titans, whether they're a linebacker needy team or not. I think that's definitely a best available pick and a great move. And I still could see him going in the teens somewhere. The problem is those teams in pick 16 to 20 have so many other needs that I don't know if they're going to go for it. But I would not be shocked if like the Eagles at 18 go out and get that, except for the fact that the Eagles don't draft a linebacker. But that's a need, and I think that would be a great pick as far up as 18 or maybe even into like 15. I think he's a talent that I have rated higher than maybe some other people.
No, Nakobe Dean, he could easily go, 18 to the Eagles. I think makes sense. Maybe the Patriots like him a little bit better than Devin Lloyd, and he ends up going there. He definitely is a guy that has been all over this process. But you hit it right on the nail on the head. I don't see him going, top 13 like to the Houston Texans or the Minnesota Vikings. And then once you get past those teams, like they're just not either a big need or like you said, they just don't prioritize the
Mm-hmm.
linebacker position. I know there's still teams out there, the Eagles, the Packers, they're some of the big ones that they're like, oh, we can just get a linebacker in the fourth round and he can just tackle the running back and we'll we'll get good pieces around him. So like that's how some teams approach it. Unfortunately, for that certain positions, linebacker is one of them, but it is great value. Definitely would be exciting. Obviously, this is a mock draft, but we didn't do trade, so it's not going to be the exact outcome of it. But George, is there any teams? I mentioned the Lions as one of my favorites. Is there any teams like if they walked out of the draft with what we have put out here on this podcast that you'd instant draft grade would be an A, even though draft grades are pointless?
As much as the Texans have so many holes to fill, I think even though they're taking two secondary pieces in your picks here at 13 and 3, they would be two great pieces to shoring up that defense finally. So the Texans are an A for me if it does fall this way. Um, I think that's probably my big one. I think the other one would probably be the Seahawks to me. They need offensive line help. Evan Neal could go as far up as I think you even said 1. That's a very good possibility. If he falls to 9, that is a great pick there for me. And I think that's an A for round 1 just because of luck. But centers aren't normally prioritized in the draft, and Tyler Linderbaum at 31, even if he gets moved to guard. And we saw how much the Chiefs prioritized offensive line after Patrick Mahomes ran for his life in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. That's a great move on the interior offensive line for them to try to keep Joe Burrow upright, who you were criticized heavily last year for taking a wide receiver instead of an offensive lineman in round 1. Man, it worked out for him, but obviously they couldn't finish because they could not keep Joe Burrow upright in the Super Bowl. So that needs to be their focus now, and I like that pick a lot.
Perfect. I did like that one as well. And you mentioned the Seahawks. They're a team that you need to keep an eye on coming up for a quarterback late in the second round. They have the 2 second-round picks. They have the ammunition to move. If they could get Evan Neal and a quarterback, it would be a solid pick. Definitely excited to see how this plays out. George, before we go, real quick, do you have any favorite draft memories? If you want to talk about your favorite crush, if you're not thinking of any memories in the draft, but what are your thoughts on that?
I think I covered a lot of my crushes here already, so I like the Kobe Dean a lot, and I've talked a lot about Chris Olave over the last few weeks, so they'd be my two favorite draft crushes from this. But as an Eagles fan, I don't have a lot of great draft memories, at least as of late. But My favorite that I will always rub in Dallas Cowboys fans is David Akers announcing Dallas Goedert in Dallas. That was one of my favorite moments. Um, but I think just like guest speakers in general at the draft are what I live for. I mean, you had Pat McAfee a few years back as well. Like they come prepared, and it's fantastic. Like especially if it's the home team or a rival of the home, where the home draft is, it's always a good time.
Definitely agree with that. And I believe I saw on Twitter, take this with a grain of salt because I'm going completely based off memory there, but I believe Kyle Brandt will be announcing, I want to say the Buffalo Bills second round pick. And he's already
That is
said
what I heard as well.
he has something prepared. So that one should be fun on day 2. Um, you all know my draft crushes by now. I've been talking about them for weeks. But I will share my favorite draft memory. It's related to the draft in a sense. Back when we were in college, me and my roommate, his name is Chance, so I'm going to refer to him as Chance for the rest of this little story. We got hyped for the draft, all right? Like that's what you do. You're in college, you're broke. So what do? Thursday after class, we head to GameStop to sell our games so we could get pizza and subs or pizza and wings. I forget exactly what the meal was. And on the way to GameStop, we're talking about our guys, we're talking about our favorite draft picks. And I'm like, please don't let the Packers draft Kenny Clark. I said that to him. I said, don't draft Kenny Clark. We're gonna draft someone dumb like Kenny Clark. I think that was my exact phrasing. We get to the NFL draft, and that was the year Miles Jack was projected to go 5 overall. Late knee injury popped up. He fell. And I loved Miles Jack. I still do. And I'm like, Miles Jack, Miles Jack, Miles Jack. We get to the Packers pick. And I swear this is the only time I've ever heard it. Maybe it's just how I remember it, but I swear Roger Goodell went and the Green Bay Packers select out of UCLA Miles Jack. He didn't. He said the college, then the player, or no, he said out of UCLA Kenny Clark, because I was like, I was getting excited. Here we go, Miles Jack. It was being reported on Twitter that they are like reevaluating their board for Miles Jack, and they still went with their board Kenny Clark. And honestly, that's why I have a podcast, and they are front office GMs that do scouting, because Kenny Clark was the right pick. He's now one of the top 3 defensive linemen in the NFL. So just, lighthearted story, but remember, give these guys a chance. Don't take everything, what they do in their rookie year is not how their career is going to go. We've seen players, it takes honestly 3 years to truly evaluate what a player is. So if you have a draft crush and your team doesn't take him, don't just automatically hate the guy that's not going to, or that
Unless they go
is
to a
on your team.
rival.
What's that?
No. Oh, I thought you were talking about don't hate the guy that didn't go to your team unless they go to a rival, but you were going somewhere else with that.
No, but I mean that's a good point. If he goes to your rival, you can hate that because that happens a lot too. Justin Jefferson, sad, but
Saquon Barkley.
But the draft is supposed to be fun. It's a lot of monumental moments for these players. Like, don't be in their. I'm obviously going to talk. I like don't be in their DMs. Like, I can't believe we picked you. That was such a reach. Like when the season comes around, don't be tweeting at them bust if they don't do anything week 1. Like that's not what this is about. It's about projecting for the future. But speaking of the future, I think we should probably wrap this up. And
no, we have one more piece of business to talk about here.
Oh, we got one more piece of business.
We do, and I think you failed to put it on our rundown here too. We are doing a predict the pick again this year, like we did last year.
I did.
If you saw our link earlier, we just posted a link. We're gonna have a more formal thing going up here, but it says that it's the 2021 predict the pick. That is NFL.com's fault. That is not ours. So it is the correct link. It is how to get into our group. We said this for the playoff challenge. Maybe we can say it again, and we have someone with an actual name win. If you win our predict the pick, maybe you have a chance to come on and talk with us about the draft in a few weeks.
Hey, I like that idea. So definitely be checking that out. As always, thank you for listening. Be sure to check out the Couch GMs. I'll post the full list of the mock draft up there, so that'll be out by the time you're listening to it. There'll also be a link there to join to predict the pick. Tyler is still in the process of moving, so He will be back with us. Don't worry. He's going to have that new sweet backdrop, whatever that is. I haven't seen his new place yet. I know George has, so we'll see what the new podcast setup looks like when he's back. But he would like to tell you that this podcast is more fun for us and more fun for you when you get involved.
Yes, it is, Cody, and thank you all one more time for listening into the Couch GMs podcast. Enjoy the draft. Keep an eye on our social media channels. Join Predict the Pick. For Cody Roadcap, I'm George Kerth, and we'll see you all next week.